pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog is nice. She's a pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the pushy broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, where we share advice and support from experts in addiction and recovery. I have a really great topic for you today that I have been thinking about for a long time, and I have spoken to this person about it, and we have brought it to the table. And I know you're going to be very interested, whether you are in recovery or whether you are beginning the process of mental health, good mental health development. This show is about the power of embracing discomfort for growth. It's going to be a very interesting conversation with a dear friend of mine and a colleague. His name is Greg Bernt. He's been in the mental health and addiction field for nearly a decade and previously worked with at-risk youth and teen parents in his hometown of Philadelphia. And Philly is close to my heart. He's been in personal recovery for 12 years and draws passion and inspiration from his own experience in order to help others in their journey towards wellness. He has a master's in clinical social work from St. Leo University, and he currently works in case management and family coaching at a place called Sober Companions. And he's been providing clinical insight for all of their services. The Pushy Broad from the Bronx is very glad to welcome back my dear friend and colleague, Greg Bernt. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me, Ellen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So this is an amazing topic. First, when I asked you to be on the show, give me a little bit of an idea why this is so passionate for you.
I think it is the ultimate deciding factor and one of the primary deciding factors in both recovery, mental health, and even for your regular normies, as we call them, for all people can benefit from this shift in mindset. And it's been so instrumental in my changes in my life as well as with many of my clients. So it's something that merits a discussion and deeper evaluation from all of us, I think, especially addicts and people in mental health.
Okay, so let's just break it down a little bit. Many people see discomfort as something to avoid, all right? But from a mental health perspective, why is it actually necessary for growth?
So externally, life is going to provide you with a lot of discomfort and adversity and stuff that's not on our terms, that just happens to us. So the more that we can equip ourselves with tools to navigate that when it happens by doing so voluntarily, the better prepared we are for what life throws at us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I mean, discomfort is, I think, the place where transformation happens. Don't you think so?
Agreed. I don't think much growth happens without in a comfortable place.
And I think our brains are wired to seek safety and predictability. But I think growth happens right beyond those limits, right? Our ego wants to keep us in a safe, secure place. And the moment we go outside of that, we're faced with fear, uncertainty, sadness, and it's signaling to the brain, I guess, that we're not safe.
Exactly.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about what happens with the brain and the nervous system when we step outside our comfort zone into that discomfort place?
Sure. So I'll give the disclaimer. I am no neurologist or psychologist. I am a shot out drug addict in recovery who doesn't retain information well. So mostly I'm speaking from a place of practical application and not from theory. But what really resonated with me only in the last year or two that I found out about neurology, which clicked, I was like, oh, that's what's happening, is there's a part of our brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex that we can actually grow by doing new and uncomfortable, scary things. And this is directly correlates to perseverance, confidence, longevity, emotional regulation. And a lot of studies even suggest our desire to live longer because it literally gives us more willpower. And how this works is by doing hard things and doing uncomfortable things and basically strengthening that muscle, whatever that may look like, that's kind of preparing us for the discomfort that life has to offer. And it's really interesting. You're basically building new neural pathways in your brain for when things get uncomfortable so you can respond to them in a different way.
It is totally amazing. Okay, so I want some practical examples. Okay. I want to know how this personally has affected you and what you have done, maybe on one or two instances, to go right into this discomfort and grow from it. Can you give us some personal examples?
Sure. This has been my biggest shift. I am one of the most hedonistic people that I know. Everything is pleasure seeking and comfort. That got me to close to 300 pounds, smoking a pack a day on heroin and crack cocaine. Whatever felt easy, it was like, give me that. What's gonna soothe me and make life feel easy and comfortable for me? The shift that I had when I got sober was I realized, oh, when I do hard things, I feel better about myself. I can regulate my emotions better. So a lot of that came with physical stuff early. Some of it came with recovery practices, but that part of the brain that I was just talking about is I kept coming up with new iterations of what that looks like. So it started just raising my hand at a meeting when I was nervous, as an example of it. Started by going to the gym every day and starting to take better care of myself physically. Then it went on to going back to school without ADD meds and getting a master's. And now it's always like, what's the hardest thing I can push myself with? I didn't know how to swim barely a few months ago, and I never run. I'm terrible with cardio stuff, and I just did a 70.3 mile Ironman. So those are like more big, grandiose versions. But in my day to day, I was talking to you earlier, and I finished swimming, which I still loathe the pool. It's terrible. I went into an ice bath and did a leg day. So those are physical examples. And other examples, last night I had an uncomfortable conversation with a friend that I disagree with that was violating some of my boundaries and picking up the phone rather than burying it and working through something in a personal relationship. So it can look a lot of different ways, but always looking for that doesn't feel good. I don't really feel like it. That probably means it's exactly what I need to be doing, you know?
That's absolutely amazing and really inspiring and inspirational. And I know you're not suggesting somebody should go out there and train for a marathon or jump into a 43-degree ice bath, okay, if that doesn't float their boat. And they don't necessarily have to go way beyond their comfort zone, right? So, what are the parameters here? How should people judge?
So I think people should gauge and push themselves, and not kid themselves. So if somebody's 350 pounds and they've never done anything physical at all in their life, I wouldn't recommend they go do a marathon or try to, because A, they could get injured. More importantly, they're going to get really discouraged and bummed out when they say, I can't do anything, and reaffirm this narrative and this negative spin cycle in their head. But they might say, you know what, I can walk 2 blocks. And my guess is they could probably walk a half mile or a full mile. And when they get to a full mile, see, they could do 1.2 miles. And you can feel yourself out, but we know when we're feeling uncomfortable. We know what ease feels like, and we know what pushing just a little bit past the limit is. And then you build that gradually and keep adding on to it in whatever version of it you're doing, but not too much at once, because you're gonna get depressed. That's what people do with rigid diets, that you're having a kale salad 2 times a day. Like, it's not sustainable. So, all about smart goals and keeping things, attainable, but also that you're pushing yourself. And that's for all of us to feel out or seek some guidance from somebody who has more experience with it to get some tips.
So it's about pace, it's about frequency, it's about rational behavior, not going beyond where actually the discomfort can be harmful.
Exactly. And I think 90% of life that is not a research supported stat, but it feels like 90% of life is showing up. So the consistency of just trying to do something. Maybe you ran 2 days and that was too much, but you can do something else uncomfortable on the third day. Just try to be showing up to this process on a daily basis. The consistency pays dividends.
Without a doubt. Okay, so in a therapeutic situation, and I know you do a lot of that stuff in a lot of coaching as well. How can we help clients reframe the discomfort as an opportunity rather than a setback?
There's an old, I believe it's a Cherokee story of what wolf are you going to feed. So there's the evil wolf and the good wolf. And the evil wolf is really just the negative wolf. So beating yourself up for stuff and shame cycling and getting down and saying, oh, I had this horrible thing and playing the victim. You're just perpetuating that cycle of negativity when you do that, rather than saying, oh my goodness, I'm undefeated against bad days. Look at all the stuff that I've overcome. Look at how that makes me uniquely qualified to help somebody else. And the more you reframe it in your brain, the more you're building a body of evidence to go back to say, wow, I remember all those other hard things that happened to me and I overcame them. Remember all those other super scary tasks or stuff that I aggrandized in my head and said you could never do this. And then I did it. And that's how we build confidence, is building this body of evidence of, oh, remember when, and I'm still here and I did a good job with it, or I fell short and I learned and grew from it. That's feeding the good wolf to me. So the more every negative thing is an opportunity to grow, in my opinion. I don't really believe in failure per se. I think they're all growth opportunities.
You're right. And I say the same thing to my clients as well. It starts with language. What are you telling yourself? If you're telling yourself you're falling apart, then you know what? You're falling apart. But if you tell yourself something is shifting and I am a little uncomfortable, but at least I'm moving. At least I'm going forward. There's some sense of progress here, and the sign of movement is immediately not a failure.
Yes.
Okay, standing still, moving backwards, being paralyzed, going through what I call that cycle of suck, that's failure. But actually, maybe thinking that I'm moving forward, just putting one positive foot in front of the other is miraculous, no matter what, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And you're right, showing up is half the battle. There's no question. And it gets a little, and you're right, it always gets a little less scary the more you do it, right? Because we have a positive reference. I did it before, I can do it again. And even if I didn't do it as well before, I still know I can get that far this time. So I think those are great things to look at. Okay, so how do you talk to clients about their emotional discomfort, their sadness, their anxiety, their shame? How do you talk to them about transforming?
So all those things, like we just talked about, can be sources of empowerment if you show up to them and work through them. But if you hunker down in them, it's what you were just discussing, is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's all CBT, internal messaging stuff of the neurons and the pathways in your brain that, oh, well, I can't do it. Well, if you say you can't do it, you're not going to be able to do it. But when people kind of hunker down in their stuff and get into this stuck spot, that's where a lot of us can't get out of and where we need help. So for a super anxious person, I'd tell them to start small and celebrate small victories. If you're going to your first AA meeting and you're terrified to speak in public, maybe you're not ready to raise your hand, but I bet you can pull somebody aside after the meeting and grab a phone number or say, hey, I'm really nervous. I'm new here, but can I get a cup of coffee? There's all these small steps, kind of, if that makes sense.
Without a doubt. All of our clients go through so many emotions, especially in early recovery and even in relapse, part of recovery. And I always try to talk to my clients about the fact that emotions should not be defined as positive or negative or good or bad, right? It's something that we have to look at and we see them as messages. What is this actually saying about our growth? Where are we here? And how do we go? So if we can look at it a little further away, I always say to my clients, take yourself out of the play, put yourself in the audience. What do you see, right? That detachment, that desensitization makes it a little easier for us to assess without the sensitivity behind it. And that constitutes forward movement. So we can look at the discomfort, but we don't necessarily have to embody it. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes, it does. And I think there's an important thing. Emotions are like the spice of life, right? But you don't want to put too much spices in a recipe. You want to be able to process your emotions. None of this is about dismissing what's happening for you, but don't let them get a hold of you. So that's when, oh, naming an emotion that's happening, identifying why you think it might be happening, then utilizing tools, whether that's your support system or journaling or meditation or going to work out at the gym. Some of these practices that help us work through, and like I said, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex literally helps you emotionally regulate better so that you're not held captive by an emotional response and being reactive to a situation. You can self-reflect and say, oh, this is what's going on within me. And here, I know what to do with it. And look, I've done it before, and look how effective that was. I'll get through this, you know.
You're right. You're right. One step at a time. So sometimes people are very afraid of discomfort or conflict of any kind. How can we help them embrace discomfort as something that actually helps build resilience?
I mean, the first question, without being passive aggressive or snarky with clients, I ask them, "How's that serving you?" You know, what is it doing for you when you're avoidant, when you shut down, when you're averse to doing anything that you don't feel like doing, and then inviting them into the gradual small steps of like, okay, do you think you could try to do this? And sometimes they'll say, no, I don't think I could do that. It's like, well, what would it look like if you tried? You know, why don't we do an experiment and see you try this small uncomfortable thing and report back to what it feels like? And it's just because they don't have the body of evidence to draw from yet. And I didn't either at one point. It's so you have to start small and then say, wow, look at me go. And that's really a crazy source of empowerment, even the small things. I mean, sometimes they'll be dismissive and say, yeah, but I only did like, no, that's why the people in their village and in their support network have to reaffirm, look at you go. That's all. You didn't know how to do that last week. And this is how we build confidence. And then, the next thing you know, there's a true transformation that happened. And we're always works in progress and we all have a long way to go. But when it comes to that, it's a faster shift than most people think when they continually show up to it.
You're absolutely right. I don't think confidence comes from avoiding pain. I think it comes from moving through it, right? And also moving through it with a counselor, with a coach, with a support group that you're talking about, the kind of work that you would do on a daily basis. And once you get a particular taste of that kind of self-trust and that growth, because you do a little more and you do a little bit more, for us, it becomes addictive, right? Oh my God, I want to do more and I want to do more. That kind of thing, it kind of snowballs. All right, so let's give us some practical examples. First of all, I want to know where it started for you. What you consider to be your biggest out of the box discomfort moment?
So when I first started, I learned into to lean into character defects to serve myself. So I was very prideful and self-righteous. And my sponsor early in sobriety was like, "Oh, you won't do this." And I went to an all boys Catholic school, so you won't is tantamount to your whole character and reputation's on the line. So he got me to show up to this CrossFit gym of all firemen that were shredded with six packs and all these things and all fit as ever. And I was 285 pounds and couldn't bench 135 on the bench. And they were not gentle with me. They were rough. And I said, guess what? I'm gonna be here 3 or 4 hours every day, and I'll be here long after you guys stop coming to the gym. And you guys are all going to fall off long before I do. And I tapped into that pride, which pride isn't a good thing, but in that instance, it served me. And I've gone to the gym 6 days a week since then, and that was 12 years ago. And this is a person I've never, even when I played sports, I never worked out my whole life. So that was the first version of it. Besides maybe going to treatment, having the courage to try to go get sober was the first one. I'd say fitness was the second one, and then it's looked a bunch of different ways. But I'm always I work on Spanish every week. I'm working to become fluent with that. I do Enneagram coaching. I meditate and do breath work. All these things that are new iterations of the same concept of what do I not feel like doing? And then I do breath work for 20 minutes on a guided YouTube thing. And I say, wow, this is a fantastic way to start my day, even though I dread it every time that I do it. So it could be big or small things.
It's very inspirational, Greg. It makes me want to go out and do something that I was really scared to do. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted for sure. Okay, so talk to me about some of your success stories, some of the stuff that you've done maybe with sober companions or in private practice. Tell me situations that have to do with breaking through that kind of discomfort zone.
So I have one long-term client, and I've really been through pulled this kid out of dope holes. This was back to when I was companioning myself before clinical supervision, and now I work with him in a different capacity. But he is wired for whatever's easy and comfortable, which I obviously relate to. And it's a push pull because you want to nudge people and gently guide them or coax them in a direction without forcing them, because that's when we all step back and say, "Get away from me." So it's been a gradual thing, but I planted seeds, and there's nothing that I do. He eventually nourished the seeds and said, "You know what? I deal with a lot of anger stuff. I have a lot of trauma." He had a traumatic brain injury, which affects his emotional regulation. And I've seen him lean into doing hard and difficult things. He's back and he got himself into college. He's working out as much as I do, which is very early in his process. And I've seen how that's translated into being less easily triggered by things and emotionally reactive because he can practice the pause. He's doing yoga, he's doing meditation, and all these little tools that he's starting to put into his kit when life on life terms happens and there's some agitation or there's some external trigger. I've seen the shift in him that he has more internal tools to navigate those things as they come. Now, is he perfect with it? Of course not, because he's still assembling his toolkit and it's a lifelong journey. But I've seen the shift in him when I say something that would have ticked him off in a major way a couple of years ago, and now he's, you know what? And he might get a little worked up and say, "I'm going to go for a run," and then circle back with me after the run and say, "You were right about that thing. It irritated me, but it was valid." So it's really been cool to watch his transformation happen. Even though we had to plant the seeds, over a long period of time. It takes some longer than others, but it's really been an honor to watch him grow in that sense.
I think this is a very key point for all of our clients, right? When they begin to break through, when they begin to understand that recovery is hard, and that people going through mental health processes and turning around and saying, "I finally want to get rid of some of the core issues that have been plaguing me forever." And now they're at a point where they have to do the hard work. And that means breaking through those uncomfortable barriers.
Right.
And also knowing from what you just said that it is a process. I always tell my clients, I cannot sprinkle magic dust. It doesn't work like that. I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and you would be exactly the way you want to be all the time, doing all the things that you need to do. So, what do you tell your clients when they start to move forward and they maybe take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back? How do you keep them on an even flow without them facing a relapse? And what happens if they do?
So I'd say that is progress isn't linear. If you were to look at Microsoft's stock chart from the 1990s, it hasn't gone straight up. Nobody's does. Um, so I think it's a balance between showing yourself grace and holding yourself accountable. The magic wand thing, I feel the same way sometimes. And then I remember if somebody would have hit me with a magic wand, they would have deprived me of the beauty of the process, which is the up and down, which is the struggle, which is oh, I conquered this day and I fell short this day. But on the day I fell short, I reassessed, reevaluated, and tweaked some things. And then I showed up good the other day. That is where all the beauty and the magic of self-development happens, of recovery happens, of mental health progress. That's where people get out of the stuck point, is to say, "Oh, you know what? I fell a little bit short in this area, but I'm not going to beat myself up for it. I'm going to bounce back." That's how you build the resilience. So I try to tell people, don't be too hard on yourself, because that doesn't serve anybody. But at the same time, hold yourself accountable and remember how it felt to fall a little bit short. "Oh, I could have done better there," to reinforce why we do the good things, why we feed the good wolf.
I most of the time do the same thing. I kind of go a little bit further with my clients and tell them, okay, yesterday was yesterday and tomorrow's tomorrow. Okay. So this whole thing, these cliches in recovery that do work, because one day at a time is the first thought, as far as I'm concerned, of mindfulness in this world, right? One day at a time. Wherever my feet are, that's where my brain has to be. So whatever I did yesterday, my objective is to do maybe 1% better than the day before, right? The Kaizen method. 1% better than the day before. I'm learning from everything that I didn't think I could do or everything that I wanted to do, and I bring it to the table today. As far as I'm concerned, the slate is clean, but there is room for improvement. And I always tell my clients, if you're sliding backwards, all you have to do is be honest with yourself and honest with your coach, and we'll work it through. We'll figure it out. All
Absolutely.
the time, we'll figure it out. There's no such thing as I'm a failure. There's no such thing as I'm a bad person for doing the things that I did. So, does this come up a lot for you in recovery? Is this the process with your clients that it's a constant push to embrace the discomfort?
All the time, yes. And I don't force it down anybody's throat, but it naturally comes right into the conversation because it's pretty glaring for most human beings in one capacity or another. But in recovery, it's really glaring because we've been just numbing every difficult emotion or doing whatever we felt like doing because the thing we had to do was too difficult. So it's really become a reoccurring theme. And it's so relatable for my own life because I fall short on a daily basis. Sometimes I have a pint of Haagen-Dazs or bet on a football game or impulsively buy a pair of sneakers. Like we are all human beings, no matter where we're at in our process. So that's, I think, what makes a lot of us in this field really relatable for our clients is like we're going through, we might be at separate chapters of the book, but like we're all in the same book, you know? So it really is a prevalent topic. And I do it without trying to be forceful, but invitational of like, why don't you examine this? How has been doing the easy and comfortable thing been working for you? And typically not very good if they've found their way to me, you know?
Okay, we only have about, I don't know, maybe 45 seconds. Do me a favor and tell me three big things that one can do right away to start building tools for building tolerance so that we can work our way up to moving through discomfort. Three things that you do.
So three things that I do are I'm physically active on a daily basis. And
Okay,
so
that's one.
we've discussed it. Two is mindfulness. I have bad ADHD. I can't sit still. Breath work, mindfulness, all that kind of stuff. And then cognitive things like learning a new language. I do the Elevate app every day for cognitive functioning. But those are three main things. So and spiritually too, it kind of goes along.
Perfect. Greg, thank you so much for being here. I always love seeing you. We're going to have you back. Embracing discomfort for growth. This is the Pushy Broad from the Bronx saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, saying thanks for listening, and remember, everybody needs a little push.
From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New